Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto had a quirk. A reluctant hero in training, but even the reluctant can become great, once they find their cause. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 45 Luck and Mistakes. Yeah, I win again. It seems Zero exhausted himself, and passed out. The winner by knockout is Toru. Not even present Mike as the announcer knew what to say to that, because the match that everyone was watching had been going on for upwards to 30 minutes. 30 minutes of watching Zero shoot his tape all around the stage, looking for a naked Toru with all of his might. The boy had stayed in the center of the stage the entire time, laid his tape across the ground to make Toru force herself to be careful where she was stepping. He played his part well, and used his quirk extremely well too. He had put up a super good fight the entire time, even as his quirk exhausted him and dried him up. The boy had tried his hardest to capture Toru, and it had taken 30 of him using up everything he had physically, before Toru made a mistake and landed on his tape. Which left the medics in an awkward situation. A knocked out Zero was laying underneath a giant ball of tape, with what might be Toru's head sticking out. Zero had managed to wrap her up using all of the tape he had shot out, but with the last push of his strength, he had tried to push her out of the stage. Sadly, he used up so much of his strength, the amount of force he used to push her even a little, had been what it took to knock him out. Then, knocked out, the giant ball of tape rolled on his back and got stuck there. That girl is the luckiest girl here, she should have lost in her first round. Midnight whispered, hand over mouth, unsure of what she had just seen herself. Clearly, Toru was the technical winner since Zero was knocked out. A knockout was considered to be more of a win than being unable to move. Since Toru was unable to move, naturally she would have been considered the loser, and then Zero decided to continue to match before it could be called in his favor. He had the win in the bag, but he tried to roll her out and passed out doing it. Since she was still awake, the win that should have been his, went to Toru instead. In the Class A audience. Wow, Toru is so lucky. Izuku started to write down notes on the fight with a smile on his face. Zero's performance had been great, and the fight had shown the weaknesses behind his quirk, which he needed to write down as soon as possible. While Todoroki had lost to Toru because of his own self-confidence in his win, and because he had been distracted by something on his mind. Zero had lost to Toru, because after watching Todoroki, Zero had chosen to make sure that Toru lost by going with overkill. Thanks to his own actions, he exhausted himself to the point of passing out, and handed his well-earned win to Toru. The girl should have lost both fights, but thanks to her opponents being distracted, and overcompensating, she was once more continuing in the tournament. Think she can luck her way to the top? Izuku asked Tenya. The boy had a large bandage over his head, the last part of his injuries that needed to be healed, from his fight with Bakugo. I don't see her getting past Bakugo. His match is next. Tenya spoke as Denki and Bakugo came out of different ends of the stadium, and started to walk towards the stage. This could get messy. Kaminari might not look it, but his quirk is really strong. If he can shoot off everything he has before Bakugo can use his quirk, this could be a quick match in Kaminari's favor. Kyoka interjected her opinion on the coming fight. Bakugo was one of the strongest in class, but Denki also had an elemental-based, long-range quirk that was great for one-on-one fighting. Against Bakugo, it was simply a matter of who could shoot off their quirk faster than the other. She glanced at the person who knew Bakugo best. Go Kaminari! You can do it! Mina called out from the stands herself, cheering on the much more cheerful of the two blondes on stage. Because if somehow, you manage to win, and Naruto collapses on stage, I have a much better chance against you than Bakugo. Mina whispered under her breath. So transparent. The entire class that heard her words thought. She just wanted an easier fight. On the stage. Man, that is a really unpleasant face you have, Bakugo. Don't worry, I'm going to end this fight as soon as I can. If Naruto's not going to use his quirk, then I'll use this as my chance to become super popular by beating him. I'll finish you off in a second, don't worry, it won't hurt much. Denki gave some warning sparks off of his body. He had a plan, he was going to release all of his power as far around him as he could. The second the fight started, he wasn't going to make everything go up in lightning. Bakugo would get knocked out before he could release an explosion, and everything would go smoothly. Denki didn't see the murder on Bakugo's face the second he spoke the words. "They're going to be peeling you off the walls, dunce face. Once I'm done with you, I'm going to beat the shit out of that nudist freak. I'll be the one to beat Fox Face, after he beats Raccoon Eyes." Bakugo shouted as small explosions came off of his hands. Midnight stood back with a nervous sweat, and she got her cell phone out and started to type a text. "Can we have the medics on standby?" Present Mike spoke what she texted him, and she gave the announcer box a thumbs up. She had been too nervous to say it herself, since she didn't want to get caught up in a dangerous explosion. She was right next to the stage, any big attacks were really capable of hitting her too. She was ready to use her quirk if it looked like Bakugo was going to go too far with it. "Don't worry, I won't hurt him much." Denki shouted over to Midnight with a grin. Bakugo looked like a bomb about to explode. Midnight waited until she saw the medics near the edge of the arena, staying away from the stage, but being there in case things got out of hand. In the stands. "I'm sad I have to watch a man die today. Kakin is going to kill him." Izuka was sweating nervously even as he said that. Bakugo was not going to take that one lying down, meaning Denki was going to be in for some serious pain in the next few seconds. Everyone offered their prayers. Back on stage. "Fight!" Midnight shouted, before she jumped for cover away from the mic, and behind a cement wall. "This will be over in a flash. Die!" Bakugo raised his arms, both of them, up the same second Denki prepared to shoot his lightning everywhere. The second any electricity started to charge up for Denki though, a massive explosion went shooting straight at Denki. Denki was covered by the explosion, before he went flying off of the stage and slammed into the wall with enough force to sink his body into it. His body was smoking, and covered in ashes, his gym clothes completely burned away, leaving him mostly naked, except for his underwear. Even then, his ass was exposed as the back part of his underwear was destroyed. Nobody cheered for Bakugo, not even a single person. He's alive, right?" Midnight asked into the mic, hiding behind the wall as she looked towards the medics. "Don't worry, I made sure to attack him the second he released that damn quirk of his. The lightning shielded his body from the worst of my explosion. Remember this, dunce face, next time you talk shit, you better be better to back it up." Bakugo growled and glared. He looked down at his own palms, and frowned when he saw that he had slightly injured his own hands. He had used an explosion that was too powerful for his own body to handle without some help from his gear. He shoved his hands in his pockets and started to walk towards the edge of the stage. What was left of the stage? In the audience. Damn it. Now I have to fight Naruto, and even if I win, I have to fight Bakugo, no matter what, I'm in for a world of hurt. I'm gonna cry, you see this, I'm crying. Mina had literal dramatic tears rolling down her cheeks. No matter what, she was going to be unable to avoid the pain that was going to ruin her day. Her only hope was that Naruto wasn't going to be capable of going all out on her. "Deku, what are your tips on fighting Naruto?" Mina had looked through the notebook, and she didn't see anything she would be able to use. Why did her quirk had to be acid? Izuka thought about it. Run away? Naruto might be suffering from blood loss right now, so if you make him use up his stamina, that might exhaust him. I mean, you could abuse Naruto's. Kirishima covered his mouth with his hands, to stop himself from talking any further. He almost revealed something that Naruto told him not long ago in private, when Naruto opened up to him. I said nothing. I'm going to go get something to eat. Kirishima got up robotically and walked off before anyone could stop him. He almost revealed that Naruto was still suffering some mental trauma. Screw it, I'm going to do my best. What is the worst that could happen? Mina shouted with a giant smile on her face. Time to show the world her stuff. Chapter 46 Finals. Deep, calming breaths. As injured as he is right now, I have a chance. I can do this. Mina thought to herself as she stood across from Naruto. She wasn't a part girl, in or out of battle, and mostly relied on her intuition for combat. If she thought something would work, she went with it, and didn't usually have to think twice. In normal situations, it didn't matter if Naruto was injured or not, her victory chances weren't great. Naruto was injured, he had refused to be healed from his last fight, and he had been through more fights than she had. He had to be low on blood, and slower than he usually would be too. Right now, I can win. Mina lowered herself and moved her arms back in force. She could do this, she could do it. Naruto groaned and held the side of his head. I can't believe I passed out in Recovery Girl's office. Thank God Momo was there, but I can't believe I had another dream about that little girl. Naruto frowned to himself. According to a blushing Momo, he didn't know why she was blushing. He had passed out for close to 45 minutes in the medical wing. Mina gulped. Fight. Sorry Mina, but I just want to get this tournament over with. Mina felt pain in her gut as she was bent over almost instantly, the distance between herself and Naruto gone. She had started to run at him when the match started, but she hadn't even noticed him move until she felt an ungodly amount of pain. Her lunch wasn't in her stomach anymore as she was lifted off of her feet, hanging in the air by Naruto's fist holding her up. She threw up, the force behind the punch getting her far more hard than she thought Naruto would be able to manage in his injured state. Her legs dangled helplessly, before she was tossed to the ground outside of the ring. Mina finished puking up what was left in her stomach. Thankfully she puked no blood so nothing vital was injured. It would seem that despite Naruto wanting to finish her up as quickly as possible, he was still taking her health into account by only hitting her hard enough to stun her, so he could toss her out of the ring. Should have known, I didn't have a chance. Mina wasn't able to properly stand by herself, so the medical man came and got her, picking her up and carrying her off to the medical area just like the rest of Naruto's opponents. Naruto was a nice guy, but people didn't usually fight him without paying a visit to the hospital after. I surrender from my match with Bakugo. Toru shouted towards Midnight from the stands. She knew she had no chance of using her luck to try and make a win against the explosive wonder himself. She was more than likely going to be blasted off of the stage like Denki had been before she could even get her shirt off. A guy like Bakugo wouldn't hesitate to blast her to pieces either, so this was as far as she was going to for in the tournament. The fact she took down 2 opponents alone was enough to get her some good notice, and giving up against an opponent vastly stronger than he could be seen as a good judge of strength. Not to mention, even if she lucked her way through Bakugo, she wasn't going to be taking down Naruto, whose bad luck would somehow counteract her good luck, and possibly make the entire stadium collapse as a supervillain attacked it with a giant rampaging fish or something. There was silence. Can she do that? I'll allow it. Midnight shouted after a moment's thought. It was up to her if she was going to allow such a thing, but it didn't really violate any rules. Boom. Bakugo, in the stands, propelled himself down towards the stadium with an explosion, using a smaller explosion to guide himself to the opposite end of the ring to Naruto. He had a wide, wicked grin with red angry eyes as he looked towards Naruto. Walking through the hallways wasn't fast enough of a method, not when he was going to be getting to fight the one person, well the second person he wanted to fight the most. Since the person he wanted to beat the most wasn't in the tournament, he would settle for this, and earn himself the #1 spot that he craved, that he deserved. I've been waiting for this chance since I saw you. I'm going to turn you into a bloody stain. Bakugo shouted out his usual pre-fight banter. Naruto wasn't fazed. In the stands. Momo limped into the stands, still somewhat hurt from her fight with Naruto, but she had a more concerned look on her face when she saw that the fight was about to start, before she could put a stop to it. On her way to the stands, she had passed by a defeated Mina, and she had heard Toru forfeit smartly. This isn't good. Naruto doesn't look like he's going to hold back. If he uses his quirk right now, he might actually kill Bakugo. Momo thought to herself as she took her seat. She would try and stop the fight, but honestly, she didn't think she could even if she tried. Naruto wasn't a person to back down from a fight, and Bakugo was sure as hell not going to do that. Are you okay? A fully healed Tsuyu asked as she looked at her fellow victim of a Naruto fight. I'll be fine, she wants to heal me little by little to conserve stamina. I'm more worried about this fight. Momo furrowed her brow. This wasn't going to be pretty. Fight. Naruto vs Bakugo. Boom. Bakugo propelled himself into the air above Naruto, over his head and behind him. Pointing both of his hands at Naruto's back the second he was behind him, he gave a great grin when he looked at how close Naruto was. His face became shocked when he saw that Naruto had his head turned to look at him, and not like he had turned his head to track him. Like he had predicted this would have been his first move, and turned his head to see where Bakugo would land ahead of time. "Don't fucking mock me!" Screaming, Bakugo unleashed his greatest explosion to date. Half of the stage was completely covered by explosions and flames, the audience getting a taste of hot air as many of them were pushed back by the shockwaves of his boom. Bakugo was launched backwards by his own explosion, out of the ring, but before he could land on the outside, he used his explosions to propel himself back into the smoke-covered ring. "Is that all you have?" The smoke started to clear once Bakugo landed, and as the smoke cleared, Naruto became visible in the same spot he had been standing in. Both of his arms were burnt from the explosion, his sleeves destroyed as well. Naruto's position had changed, and his arms were extended at his sides. The stage behind Naruto, in a triangle, was left unharmed by the explosion. It looked like Naruto had changed the direction the explosion was flying at the cost of his arms, blood dripping from his fists as he dropped them to his side. Bakugo took a step backwards and looked around. How did he do that? "Do that again, I dare you bastard!" Bakugo shouted as he pointed his arms at Naruto. His words were challenge to Naruto, who turned to face Bakugo fully. "I just want this tournament over with, whatever is eating your ass, isn't my problem." Naruto spoke seriously, frown on his face instead of the usual grin when challenged by a strong opponent. "Fine, I'll take on whatever it is you have." Naruto took up a stance. He was going to finish this as fast as he could, though it would be harder since Bakugo was a range fighter. Naruto pointed 2 fingers on his hands, 2 each hand, towards Bakugo, and he nodded towards him. "Fuck you." Bakugo unleashed a massive explosion, equal the one earlier in size, and aimed it right at Naruto. This time, the audience was looking at Naruto instead of Bakugo, and saw Naruto point his fingers towards the center of the explosion as it rocketed at him. The second the flames touched his fingertips, Naruto jerked his arms forward into the explosion itself, and most of the explosion started to get sucked into where Naruto's arms were. The rest of the explosion was safely diverted to the sides, away from Naruto himself. Using one hand, Bakugo launched himself up with a small explosion, using the smoke around Naruto to hide his spots, before he floated above where Naruto would be in the dust cloud. Aiming down, he fired another explosion with both hands this time, right into the heart of the smoke. Landing on the other side of the smoke, Bakugo started to run towards the smoke as it faded away. The more he sweat, the more powerful his quirk was, so he needed to stay as active as he could, moving around as much as physically possible for the fight in order to fight at his strongest. When the smoke faded, Naruto wasn't standing in the smoke. He wasn't anywhere. He killed him. "Who the hell are you all calling dead?" Naruto asked as he stood behind Bakugo, crouched down in his shadow, using Bakugo's own body to hide himself from immediate notice. Bakugo faced his palms at Naruto, and unleashed a small barrage of explosions as he put some distance between himself as Naruto. Naruto grabbed him by the wrist though and slammed him into the ground. He used the smoke to hide his escape, and while I was in the air, he used my shadow to hide himself from me noticing him. "I hate this, but this bastard is even craftier than that worthless Deku." Bakugo pushed his palms into the ground. Naruto stepped on his hand, smothering it into the now revealed dirt. Naruto kicked Bakugo in the face, knocking him into the air with a bloodied nose. When Bakugo aimed an explosion at Naruto, Naruto swung his arm right next to the explosion and created a small air current. The explosion itself was diverted away from Naruto's body very slightly, and changed the direction Bakugo planned to propel himself in. "I don't get why you have a beef with me, but you're not my rival. I noticed you are looking at me like a rival, but with your mentality, I'll never accept somebody like you as a rival, much less a hero. You and Todoroki both are strong, have good battle prowess, and amazing quirks. Neither of you are even close to being worthy of ever becoming a hero though." In his eyes, I see his motivation being spite for his bastard of a father. In your eyes. Naruto grabbed Bakugo by the face, and slammed him head first into the broken concrete. I see selfishness. A hero is a person who saves people. A hero doesn't want to become number one, just because they want to be number one. A hero is a person with ideals, convictions, strength of heart, to save the lives of others, even at the cost of their own if required. I see a desire to be the best in your eyes. Deku, Izuku Midoriya, that guy you seem to hate, now he is worthy of being called a hero one day. He has what it takes to be somebody I can proudly call my rival. Naruto raised his fist, and as Bakugo raised his palms to blast Naruto, he slammed his fist into Bakugo's face, slamming him into the ground a little deeper. He just wanted this tournament to be over. He needed to talk with his uncle about something more important than this, and he needed to do it as soon as possible. Deku, it's always Deku, it's that damn fucking nerd. What does he have that I don't? Why does that little weakling get your attention, while I don't even register on your radar? I'm stronger than him. Bakugo shouted out, his face a little beaten, but it wasn't enough to stop him. Naruto didn't need even a second to think it over. Being a hero isn't about being the strongest, it's about protecting people, that's it. Deku is a weak little nerd, like you said, but even if you're weak, you can get stronger. Having the strength of heart to put your life on the line for somebody in need, that is the trait I look for when I think of a hero. As you are now, until you grow as a person, you're not ever going to be on my radar. We were born with these powers to help others. Naruto slammed his open palm into Bakugo's chest. He's Frog Strike. Using the same move he used on Tsuyu, since he just wanted the fight over with, Naruto knocked Bakugo out the second he was able to get the blow right to where he needed it to be. Naruto frowned as he stood up over the knocked out Bakugo. Winner by knockout, Naruto. People can change Bakugo, for better or for worse. I hope one day you'll grow up, and become worthy of the title hero. This world needs as many heroes as it can get. With those final words, Naruto started to walk away. As soon as the winner's ceremony was over, he needed to speak with his uncle. Chapter 47 Confession Time. You didn't attend the award ceremony to get your medal. Toshinori wanted to lecture Naruto about making more public appearances, as he passed Naruto his first place medal. The second the tournament had ended, Naruto had went to him, and told him that he wanted to talk with him as soon as possible. With that, Naruto had left the stadium and went told Midnight that something important came up. First place still went to Naruto, he just needed a proxy to take his medal for him until he could collect it. They were in Naruto's dorm room, and Toshinori blinked in surprise when he saw that Naruto's bed had been thrown out, and replaced by a large sleeping shark. The shark with multiple body parts that belonged to other animals, with its back covered in bare fur to make a new form off bed for Naruto. This is Shark, I took him as a pet, and he's going to stay here to keep guard over my Hoshi no Tama for me. I've been in the process of training him not to attack people. Anyway, I wanted to talk with you about something important. Naruto brushed off the comment about him not attending the ceremony. Naruto sat down on the floor and tossed his medal onto his desk, before he crossed his arms and leaned up against Shark. Did my mother ever have visions of the future, in dreams? Naruto asked his uncle right away. There was no need for him to beat around the bush. To my knowledge, only visions about things that concerned her. Nobody ever believed her though, since her quirk was a transformation type. Are you telling me you've been seeing visions? Toshinori asked in concern. If that was so, then that would not only validate what Kushina used to say when she had weird dreams, but it would also mean that there was more to Naruto's quirk than either of them knew about. The original Ninetales quirk had always been a mystery, and when it transformed into the Monster Fox quirk, it was never known just how much of the Ninetales quirk's power transferred into the new quirk. Naruto getting visions as dreams was a big deal if it was true, since it meant he could also manifest other abilities of the Ninetales quirk in the future. Naruto nodded. At least, I think. I've been seeing dreams of villains, and there is this little girl I keep seeing in my visions, her name is Eri. I need help, she needs to be saved. I really need your help. This is what she looks like. Naruto had drawn several pictures of her. He had taken his time, to make sure and get all of her features down as exactly as he could. He included the scars on her arms, because it was important to show just how much abuse she was going through. And there are almost no records of her, anywhere I looked. When I checked her family registry, it says she is living with a blood relative, but her father was a Yakuza boss. I think she's being used for her quirk, but I don't have proof. Naruto had already made time to do as much research on her as he could. Her parents were gone, and she had no other real relatives. She was living, with what Naruto assumed, to be her father's minions. If she was being this abused, then she must have a quirk that they wanted to use her for. You really don't do anything halfway, do you? Toshinori glanced at Naruto's desk, and he saw a multitude of documents there. Documents about Himiko Toga, who recently escaped from jail. Documents about the girl Eri, and even files on multiple other criminals who seemed to be unrelated to each other. He could tell that Naruto's dreams were really bothering him. Is there something else about your dream? You wouldn't be this worried if it was just that. Criminals can be taken down by heroes. What has you so worked up? Toshinori asked with a frown. It wasn't like Naruto to ever become worried about villains, unless the situation was truly horrifying. This girl, in my dream, that part isn't important. She needs to be saved. She's suffering, and nobody is helping her. Naruto shook his head. Toshinori looked at Naruto and nodded. Well, the tournament just ended, but pro heroes are already putting in applications to take you in for the internships. You winning the tournament and getting first place, without your quirk, really impressed a lot of people, myself included. I'm proud of what you did today. Toshinori took up his muscle form and gave Naruto a signature thumbs up. Naruto grinned. That made him happy. With Momo. She was unhappy with what she had to do. I have to tell her the truth, she has the right to know. Momo thought as she covered herself with a towel. She had been following after Mina, since the tournament ended and everyone started to go back to their dorm rooms. Mina had started to head towards the female baths though instead of her dorm room, like she had originally thought the girl would do. The girl had been given third place in the tournament, even though she only ever really fought once, and didn't get a chance to show off through any of the other events. Her fight against Naruto had been utterly one-sided, so it didn't really count as much of a fight. Ashido, Mina, do you want me to wash your back for you? Momo spoke up as she followed after Mina. She recoiled a little when she saw Mina's absolute lack of shame or modesty, as she had her towel draped over her shoulder, instead of covering her body. In the girls' changing room or not, one didn't just strip down and not cover themselves. She understood Mina was comfortable with nudity, and didn't need the reason to hide her body around other girls, but not all other girls wanted to see her body. Oh, Yeo Momo, sure, I guess. After throwing up, I just sort of felt like a bath, but you must have really worked up a sweat yourself. Mina exclaimed as she put her arms back behind her head. Momo looked at her body. She's got a really nice figure, not extra fat on her. All muscle. Momo thought, obviously not counting the fat on Mina's breasts. Mina was just a couple of cup sizes smaller than she was, and that was saying something. She noticed that Mina's purplish-pink body really made it kind of hard to see any real flaws in her body. Since her skin color was dyed its color by the acid running through her veins, her body didn't really scar or gain blemishes. Not to mention when she used her acid, the first thing to go would be the dead skin cells on her body. Meaning her skin was absolutely flawless, and remained tight. With your quirk, your skin must be thicker, so you'll look younger longer. Momo spoke out loud without meaning to. Men had thicker skin, but thanks to Mina's quirk, part of her quirk factor would be thicker skin, meaning that like a man, her skin would naturally stay wrinkle-free longer provided that she took care of herself. With her acid quirk, she was always giving herself better skin as well, by flushing all the bad stuff out. Basically, Mina would never have to worry about acne or blemishes. Really? Never thought about that. Cool. You're not very shy about your body, are you? Momo asked as they entered the showers to give their bodies a pre-wash before entering the bath. She got behind Mina and started to wash her back for her. She was right, Mina had extremely soft skin. Mina snorted. My quirk is acid, you have no idea how many times I melted my own clothes growing up. I'm fine with a little skin showing, I just don't like it when pervs peep on me without my consent. Mina wasn't a shy girl, by nature, or by the way she was raised. Which is good, since I've been trying to seduce Naruto, that idiot just doesn't get it. Mina sighed and shook her head. Momo froze at the mention of Naruto. She needed to say something to Mina. About Naruto, when we were in the medical office, we kissed. Momo came out and said it. Now she just needed to wait for Mina to explode, and slap her or something. There was no way that a girl like Mina was going to stand by and let another girl kiss her boyfriend, or boyfriend kiss another person in general. She looked in the mirror, and saw that Mina didn't really have any reaction positive or negative towards the comment. She just looked at Momo in the reflection, and started to wash her hair. So. I kissed your boyfriend, you should be screaming at me. Momo was shocked by that complete lack of reaction. Mina just snorted. Naruto would never cheat on me, I have faith in him. Also, you're my friend Yao Momo, and you're a good person too. Knowing Naruto and you must have kissed by accident or something, and you're overthinking things and feel guilty. I'm not going to be mad because of an accident. Accidents happen, anyway, it was just a kiss. Mina didn't blow up, get angry or jealous, or have any reaction that Momo was expecting of her. She just smiled and sent her a thumbs up, showing that they were still cool. She was forgiven for the accident. Mina was surprisingly mature about this. I expected you to. Momo didn't know how to put it. Get angry or start crying. Nah. Anyway, the fact you feel bad about this makes me feel a lot better. I'm really jealous of how you and Naruto just seem to click together so naturally. I was worried you and he might fall for each other, and leave me forgotten, ha ha ha. Then I remembered, you're not interested in love like most girls. Mina laughed, before she yelped when she got soap in her eyes. Momo frowned. Naruto and I, click. Momo asked with a tilted head. You and Naruto are, like, perfect together. You're both powerful, have awesome quirks, are really heroic, and super hot, your teamwork is amazing, you rely on each other a lot, and seem to just have personalities that go really well together. You two are like yin and yang, different, but balance each other. Heck, if I hadn't met Naruto first, he might have fallen for you for real. Mina laughed off her own jealousy. Was she still jealous? Yes, and as she spoke she actually felt a little fear in the pit of her stomach. The nervousness that she always felt when she saw those two together, the fear Naruto might fall for Momo and forget about his love for her, well, it was hard to get rid of fears, even if they were irrational. Momo just seemed a little shocked, her mind had trouble accepting what Mina said, but she started to imagine it a little. Momo's daydream. Naruto and Momo, both in full hero costume, both sat across from each other, with slices of cake in front of each other. The two of them were a little older than they were now, with Naruto's hair having been cut a little shorter, and her figure a little different as well. Her mature body just a little more mature, the two of them just enjoying their idle hours of hero work while on patrol, eating together at a small cafe at an outdoor table. They were eating with one hand, and their other hands were together, on top of the table, a small display of affection. You have some cake on your lips. Naruto reached up and wiped the cake off with a thumb, before he licked it, and grinned at her. She blushed. Back to reality. Thankfully, you met him first, ahahaha. Momo hid her face behind Mina's hair and head, so Mina wouldn't see her absolutely burning red cheeks. I never even thought about that until you mentioned it. Darn, why did you have to bring that up, Mina? Momo hated what she just imagined. Showing affection like that in public, she never imagined her own imagination would be that daring and lewd. Yep. I want to be a hero and all, but honestly, I'm fine if I become a sidekick too. I'm just doing this, because it's kind of expected of me. You are really focused on becoming a pro hero, not just a sidekick. There is no way you would ever fall in love when it could get in the way of your career. Well, I wouldn't say that. Yep, so I have nothing to worry about. You're different than girls like me and Toru. So, let's keep chasing our goals together, as friends. Mina spoke, her smile blinding as she interrupted Momo without meaning to. Momo sighed and nodded her head. This was honestly the best outcome in the end. Chapter 48, A Nice Suit. How is this going to help me learn frog kata? Tsuyu wasn't questioning Naruto's training methods, she was more than happy to do what was asked of her, but she was a little surprised when instead of focusing on her upper body like she first thought, she was working on her legs. All she was doing was running behind Naruto, basic training, with a tire tied to her with a rope. It was just leg strength training, mixed with stamina training. Well, there was a little bit of an added challenge, since Naruto drew a line around the track with chalk, and she was only allowed to let her feet run while touching the line. Your quirk makes your legs really strong and you're flexible, sure, but you need a really high control over your body. Not to mention, the stronger your body, the better this style is, and if you lack stamina, this style will destroy you too. While fighting, you're moving your body about 4 times as much as normal. When you're moving, you'll be losing stamina about 4 to 40 times faster. Naruto explained with a grin. He was taking this as his chance to train as well, since this was their last day off from school after the sports festival, and tomorrow they would be back to normal. So, he was using his quirk at the two-tail form, and running while pulling a truck behind him with a rope. He had seen where he needed to improve without the use of his quirk at the sports festival, and saw where he stood against his classmates. Now he needed to test the limits of each of the tailed forms he was able to enter while in control. Once he knew all of his limits, then he would see about finally pushing one more step further with them. Wouldn't I lose stamina 4 times quicker, since I'm moving 4 times as much? Tsuyu questioned his math on that. If your body was in peak condition maybe, but fighting with the frog kata is like a contradiction in the form of fighting. You have to be fast and slow, aggressive and passive, strong and weak, moving and still. Not only does this force your body to constantly try to force itself to pick one or the other, but your mind always has to be completely empty, but focused as well. This fighting style is both mentally and physically draining. Naruto was happy to explain it to the first person who ever wanted to really know the mechanics. Kirishima knew a little from their spars, but Tsuyu was the first person who ever wanted to learn the fighting style. Tsuyu saw Naruto's smile. He was really proud of this style. Why such a large gap in stamina loss? She questioned why his guess was between 4 and 40. For an untrained body, you lose more stamina. For an untrained mind, you lose more stamina. There are a lot of conditions. You need to be able to control and relax your body, focus and empty your mind, become still and moving at the same time. If you master each of these, and become used to it, this style will take less of your stamina. The frog kata isn't just a set of motions to attack, it uses every part of the body, and you can use it in any way. With your build, you would be best using the frog kata with your legs. Naruto glanced back and looked her up and down. Her arms weren't super strong, maybe a little stronger than a normal girl's arms, but her legs beat her arms by a huge margin. Even if she trained her arms to the limit, she would more than likely never be able to use them to use the frog kata to any real effect. Thinking on what he was saying, Tsuyu couldn't help but think of an important question. How long will this take to learn? Tsuyu asked him with a finger to her lips, all while running behind him. At this point, she was even starting to sweat and pant. She was about to reach the point where her body was going to hurt to tell her to give up. I would say about 6 months before your body is good enough to start, and after that point. I would guess about 1 or 2 years total. That is a long time, but the ability to knock out villains easily, without killing them, makes that amount of time worth it. Learning the frog strike will help me become the best hero I can be. Tsuyu nodded her head simply. She had a goal ahead of her, and it was one that would require a lot of her time and patience. Though, Naruto's freakish stamina made a little sense now, if he was always training his stamina to make use of this type of fighting style. Actually, the way he was so strong without his quirk made sense too, if he put this much effort into training all of his life like he seemed to do. My siblings want to see you again, by the way, and my parents want to thank you. They've been asking me to invite you to dinner when I go home on the weekend. Tsuyu remembered that when she thought about how strong Naruto was. Her brother was really impressed with Naruto, and the way her classmate had been a key component to saving the world, and freeing her from enslavement, and everyone from destruction. Sure, sounds fun. Wow, it was that easy to get Naruto to do stuff? I've said this before, but you're really nice. I'm sorry for thinking you were scary when we first met. Tsuyu really was sorry for her first impression of him. A tall, strong guy who seemed to always have something on his mind, that could turn into a large dangerous fox, spew flames, and apparently enough punishment to kill a regular person, was just a terrifying person. Not to mention, even now, almost every time he used his quirk, she always felt the sensation that she was around a large, dangerous predator that could go on a rampage at any given moment. It was strange that she had that feeling, when Naruto had never given her a reason to suspect he would do anything to hurt his friends, other than beat them up in tournament fights, which didn't count. Naruto looked back at her with confusion. You don't need to apologize. We're friends now, so what you thought of me before won't change how I think of you now. I'm just happy to have friends like you in my life at all. So adorable. Tsuyu had never thought she would see such a big guy talking about friendship in such a genuine, honest way. It was absolutely adorable to see this big scary guy act like the total softie that he really was. Not to mention, in his fox form, his fur looked really soft literally. She kind of wanted to see if his fur was as soft as it looked, but she was a little too embarrassed to ask if she could ride on his shoulders. A girl her age shouldn't be asking boys that, not to mention she didn't want to come across as too, I want to ride on your shoulders. Tsuyu accidentally spoke her mind, without thinking about it. Her cheeks turned pink. That was a really embarrassing thing to ask in general. Naruto shrugged. Sure, don't see why not. Another location. You're late. Menma frowned deeply, dusting off his nice suit as he sat on the desk of an elementary schooler. With the time of day it was, there was nobody that was around to see him. It was after school, and this would serve as the best place to send a message. He hated being kept waiting, and sadly, his younger sister had no concept of what it meant to be on time. Her blood-ravaged mind only ever thought of when the next time she could go wild would be, and while her amazing power and combat potential could never be ignored, any attribute she held outside of fighting was annoying to even him. The girl was constantly late for everything, didn't care if she was making a scene or not, didn't ever give two shits about if their plans failed or succeeded. All she ever wanted was what she wanted, or whatever caught her interest. She was an animal, through and through. It's not often I get to possess people, brother, allow me to enjoy myself some. Kamui Woods spoke as the pro-hero walked into the room with a skip in his step. His voice sounded normal, but it was far more peppy than the usual Kamui Woods. Their mother had the Ninetales power of illusion, their elder brother had the Ninetales power of foxfire, and Naruto had the Ninetales power of possession. While she used her quirk, she was capable of possessing the bodies of others. Transforming her body and going inside of them, completely taking over their minds and bodies, with very few having ever been able to force her out of their bodies. Those with a blood relation to her were usually the ones that had a form of resistance to her power. The key to being successful in the business world is proper advertisement. Our cousin, he wants the League of Villains to be successful. He's a child though, our elder he might be. The way he thinks is too small-minded, allowing Stain to simply kill heroes in alleys. There are better ways. Release him, he needs to struggle. Menma ordered his sister with a deep frown. Straightening his tie, he stood up and placed a smile on his face. Kamui Wood's body jerked, before a black shadow started to exit his body, and it reformed into a Naruto, taking her own one-tail fox form, a near-exact copy of Naruto's own, only with a slightly more feminine build to it. She quickly powered down and started to skip around the room, kicking over desks that got in her way. Destruction. Where, who are? Calm down, Kamui Woods, it won't do for a hero to spend their last moments on their world questioning the pointless. You're here to serve as a sacrificial offering to a purpose greater than you. Be pleased, your death will be used to further the goals of the League of Villains. Menma spoke in a too friendly voice. That was all Kamui Woods needed to hear. I'll not go down easily. If you have information on the League of Villains, then I'll capture you. Kamui Woods shouted out as he pointed his arm at Menma. Menma clapped, while standing behind Kamui Woods as the wood that shot out of his arm destroyed the wall that was behind where Menma had been standing. Menma took a small marble out of his pocket with a X on it and flicked it in the air. Kamui Woods' reflexes were on the good side, because he turned around in an instant and using more binding wood to try and capture Menma. Menma was in the air, with the marble he flicked in his hand. He had teleported upside down so that his feet were on the ceiling, and he took a bag of marbles out of his pocket and let them all start to fall out of the bag. Looking towards Naruto, who had a X on the back of her neck, he teleported to it while the marbles were still falling out of the air. "I've allowed you to struggle enough, time to finish this." Menma opened his jacket and showed that the inside of his suit was lined completely with knives. When the marbles in the air had Kamui Woods completely surrounded, he ran his hand over the knives in his jacket quickly. Instantly, every knife he touched vanished, and they appeared at the marbles. With how close the marbles were to Kamui Woods, each and every knife ended up stabbing the man in a different location. The head, the heart, the liver, and over 24 other knives were all stabbing the man. His death was instant. Naruto pouted. "I blinked and missed the fight, brother. You killed him too fast. That fight took like a second. You should have let me kill him." Naruto complained when she saw Kamui Wood's corpse start to fall to the ground. Menma held up his bag, and while the marbles were still falling out of the air, he started to catch them in the bag. The fight had been finished before the marbles even hit the ground, and since Menma caught them all, they didn't touch the ground after the fight either. Menma stopped smiling. "This is a nice suit. I didn't want to needlessly prolong this fight and risk allowing him to touch me. Now, do the dirty work, and use his blood to paint a message on the walls. Dealing with a hero leaves a bad taste in my mouth. This kind of work is more suited for savages like you," Menma pointed out. Naruto hugged him, and he rolled his eyes at her. "What was I supposed to write?" Naruto whispered, since she didn't remember anything about the plan, other than she was supposed to possess the first hero she saw, and bring them to this building. She almost never listened to people when they talked. Menma sighed. "The League of Villains is gaining power, heroes beware." Chapter 49, A Rivalry That Surpasses Time. "All Might, thanks for talking with me." Toshinori was a little confused when he got a call from Izuku of all people, asking to meet up with him first thing in the morning before school. The boy had been showing vast improvements in the One for All Quirk, and with Naruto's tutoring there had not been much for him to do with the training. He was a little surprised that Izuku wanted to meet with him for some reason. "Sure my boy, anything. You should feel safe asking me anything dash. Why didn't you choose Naruto?" Izuku asked with a serious look. It had taken him a while, but he had finally worked up the courage to ask this one question that had been haunting him. Naruto winning the sports festival without his quirk, and seeing his classmate in action so many times just cemented this question. Naruto was clearly the better suited person to inherit One for All. With his body he would be able to easily master the power, and with his own extremely powerful quirk, he would easily surpass All Might himself as a hero. His undying willpower, courage, and his strong morals and values of a hero were just something that stood out head above the rest of their class. Izuku looked up, and saw Toshinori was visibly surprised, and even a little saddened by the question. "I knew this question might come one day, when Midoriya started to grow stronger." Toshinori knew, he knew this would come. As a weakling, Izuku had never had a reason to compare himself to others in a positive way. The gap between himself and others was just always so great, that he could never see the tips of their power. He was stronger now, and it was natural he would compare himself to others. With his growth in strength, he was finally able to see where others' powers lay in comparison to his own power. The gap wasn't as great as it was before, and Izuku would just keep closing that gap, before he surpassed those who had been ahead of him. No doubt, he had compared himself to Naruto, and upon seeing the gap in power, Izuku had once more been placed back into the position where couldn't see where a person's power was in comparison to himself. "I asked dash. I heard you. Why?" Toshinori wanted to know if he was right. Izuku became serious. "Because, if he had this power, he would be a better hero than I would with it. Even now, after months. I still can't see how strong he is. I was able to compare myself to Kaken, one of the strongest guys I know. No matter how strong I get, how much of this power I use, it is like Naruto is always ahead of me, and he's getting farther away." Izuku looked down at his hands, which had been broken so many times when he trained with his power. At his strongest, he could use at most 11% of his power without completely breaking himself. Even with that power though, he knew he wouldn't win a fight with Naruto, while Naruto wasn't using his quirk. Toshinori nodded when he heard the explanation. He sighed. When I got this power from my master, I wasn't her first choice, the one she wanted to inherit the power. He refused to accept one for all. His name was Minato Namikaze - Thunder God. The previous number 2 hero before his untimely demise years ago, famed as a hero who nearly as powerful as you, and having attained the moniker of the fastest hero alive. Izuku started to nerd out then and there as he went over everything he knew about the man. It was well known that All Might and Thunder God were both a famed duo at one point, but they went their separate ways very quickly after realizing they could save more lives when working separate. Wait, you weren't the first one picked. Izuku realized what had been said. Toshinori smiled. Yes, Minato was one of the few people I call a brother to me. My dear friend. He was powerful, kind, strong-hearted, and when I was quirkless, I never even thought of comparing myself to him. While I was training to get this quirk with him, we shared the same master. Minato was always ahead of me. No matter what I did, it was like the gap never closed. Even after getting this power, I never actually beat him in any of our sparring matches. Hold your horses. Toshinori saw Izuku about to nerd out again. He was explaining something important, and he didn't need word vomit being spewed out. That could wait for later on. Anyway. He helped me hone this power. When my master chose him as the next one for all inheritor, I felt it was natural, and he refused. Even today, I imagine what it would have been like if he took the power. Toshinori could imagine Minato being alive, Kushina being alive too, and him being a regular person as he served as an uncle to the family. He couldn't help himself but smile, since that simple life sounded nice too. Why did he refuse this power? 2 heroes can save more people than 1 hero. He had his own quirk, and me without a quirk, wouldn't be able to become a hero. He could become a hero with his own power, and allow me to become a great hero with this power. The only reason Minato never become the number 1 hero instead of me, was simply because Minato wasn't as popular as I was. That man wanted the world to have more heroes, instead of wanting to take more power for himself. Toshinori smiled as he thought about one of the few personality traits that Minato had passed down to his son. Wait, isn't Thunder God Naruto's dad? Izuku suddenly realized something else very important. Yes, and like his father, when I tried to pass the quirk onto him, Naruto chose to refuse. He wanted somebody else to become a hero with that power, and when you came along, he promised to help groom you into the role of my successor. Toshinori couldn't hide it in good faith. Izuku deserved to know now that he had asked. He was never going to bring it up to the boy on his own, because there was no reason to tell him he was the second choice. Lying to him though, that was out of the question. They were master and pupil, they couldn't build their foundation of trust on lies. Izuku looked down, unsure, and because of that Toshinori sighed. It was never easy learning you were only picked because somebody else didn't want it. Izuku looked out the window, and saw a massive fox coming from the dorms to the main school building. The only thing that is keeping Naruto from becoming the strongest hero, is his own fear. His worst enemy is himself, and the day he masters his emotions, is the day the next number 1 hero is born. He's your rival. Toshinori spoke with a grand smile on his face. Just like his father. Years ago. Smash! Toshinori shouted as his fist made contact with his opponent, just at the same time as his opponent touched his hand. Go both Toshinori and himself. Minato, in full hero costume, and Toshinori in costume as well. Toshinori's fist was in Minato's stomach, before Toshinori and Minato switched places instantly. The entire shockwave of the attack, and all of the damage of it, suddenly transferred into Toshinori's own body as the shock from his punch hit himself. He was blasted away, while Minato landed on the ground with his back to Toshinori. Flying Thunder God Mutually Instantaneous Revolving Teleport, that sounds like a great super move name. Minato explained to himself as he made a mental note to write that down later. By touching himself and his opponent, he could teleport them both at the same time, to where each other were standing. That way, just as an attack would hit him, the aftermath of the attack would be transferred into the opponent's body and not his own. He just had to make sure to only teleport his own body, and not the vibrations of the attack that were hitting his body. That way when he switched places with his opponent, all of the force of the attack would transfer to them, even though they weren't being hit by the attack. Are you okay too? All Might? Minato asked as he took his helmet off his head, a wide smile on his face. Toshinori was grinning as he jumped back to where Minato was. No longer using his quirk, his massive muscles shrank a small amount, to slightly less massive muscles, for each one for all user. The way they used their quirk was different. His master used the quirk without gaining any muscle mass, while his increased when he used the quirk. Your extremely long super move names are the reason you are not more popular. Nobody knows how to advertise you when you are always making such goofy names. Would you like to continue? Toshinori asked as he raised his hands up. Minato waved him off. Sure, let's see that new smash. I have a couple more teleports in me today. Minato put his helmet back on. We can't keep this going long though, I need to get back to Kushina soon, today is the special day she will be. Minato stopped when the sky turned white. Pink orbs appeared in the air, and an extremely loud roar could be heard. A massive red moon appeared in the sky, all of the clouds turned just as red. Toshinori was confused. It's the middle of the night. This is an illusion. I'll be right back. I'm going to check on Kushina. Minato spoke as he touched himself, and like that, he was gone. Toshinori was confused. Illusions? Present day. To think, that would be the last time Minato and I were able to spar. If I had known, I would have gone with him. I could have helped. Toshinori felt a regret that had never gone away, even after all of the years that had passed by. There was so much he was never able to talk with Minato about, share with him, and Minato would never be able to watch his son grow up. Your son is going to surpass you one day, to think. I never won against you, did I? Toshinori smiled to himself with an air of regret. Minato was the one person who he had never been able to really beat in a fight. The bastard was too damn slippery with that quirk of his, and his highly advanced strategic mind. You weren't the first choice, and neither was I. Izuku whispered to himself. In that aspect, he was just like All Might, and his rival, Naruto, was the son of All Might's rival. Izuku couldn't help but smile at the mirror between his relationship with Naruto, and All Might's relationship with Thunder God. If he could close some of the gap between himself and Naruto, then he would be a step closer to becoming the symbol of peace that All Might wanted him to be. Just as he will surpass his father, you must surpass me, your master. Toshinori placed high expectations on Izuku, but he knew it was possible for the boy. He just needed to work more, try harder, and push himself beyond his limits. Izuku gulped, before he nodded. Watch me become a hero that surpasses you then. Tell him. Toshinori thought to himself, knowing full well that it was more than likely not going to happen. He had resolved himself to be completely honest with Izuku, but this was something that was a lot harder to talk about. He gave Izuku a thumbs up. He felt like a coward. Chapter 50 My Hero Name. Happy day. I'm so happy with this, I'm sure he'll accept. Ryuko spoke as she looked at a glass case that was showing off a manly, orange version of her own uniform, with black accents to it and a fur color to it. She had already submitted to UA her own personal request to allow her to take Naruto as her intern for the intern week. She was sure that Naruto had gotten a ton of other requests from other pro heroes, but she was like his elder sister. She had babysat him so much as a child, to the point he was bound to pick her. She was one of the first people of the top 10 to suggest that instead of preventing Naruto from becoming a hero, that they train him to control his quirk better than his mother. She had been just a child herself when Kushina lost control, so for her, the experience wasn't something she even remembered. Naruto was destined to pick her. After all, unlike other heroes who would just have Naruto watch them or lecture them for a week, she knew what he was capable of. She knew very well Naruto was more prepared for hero work than the majority of pro heroes. He was already ready, school was just a formality for him. He already did hero work when events happened around him, so she knew that she could trust him out in the field. She was going to put him to work, right beside her, so that he could use this week to gain all of the experience he needed for the future. You're super happy, Ryuko. Am I? Ryuko schooled her features, calming herself. She had waited for this day for a long time, the day that Naruto would be able to legally do hero work at her side. She had offered him a position as her sidekick when he graduated, so that he could build a reputation outside of being Foxman. Sure, he wasn't going to be her sidekick right now, of course, but it was just a few short years away. I'm rather excited. I believe that I got the student I requested as an intern. Don't you have paperwork to file? Ryuko pointed out to one of her employees for her own office. Seeing as she was a pro hero who was pretty famous, she had long since had her own office, and plenty of employees who filled out all of the legal stuff for her. One of her more important people, the man who was the head of her advertisement team, had approached her without her paying much attention to it. I was just wanting your permission for something. You see, my son Gaara is in U.A.'s business course. I wanted to know if he would be allowed to work here as an intern, and learn from me. His business course are having their own internships to learn about the business end of things in person. Raza Sabaku bowed to her lowly. He wanted to be able to show his son the ropes in real life, instead of just telling him stories. Introduce him to important people, and start helping to build his son's future before he left U.A.'s hallways. Ryuko raised an eyebrow. As a hero herself, she actually never had any idea that the other courses did internships. It kind of made sense for the business course to do them. But she didn't see the general studies doing them. It also made sense for the support course to do them. I'll allow it, but we can't let our personal attachments affect our work. I expect you to continue to put 100% into your work while you teach him. Ryuko stated that not only to Raza, but also herself. She was doing this not for just herself, but Naruto too. This was her chance to finally allow Naruto to do some real hero work, legally, and help him gain the experience that she was never able to give him before now. She couldn't allow her relationship with him to affect her own hero work either, meaning she had to act as a mentor, and continue to be a pro about it. The costume she had made for Naruto, it was something she wanted him to wear at least once. It was her gift to him, and her apology to him. She had been easily captured during the entire supervillain issue, and had required help to become free. She had fought against Naruto against her will, and tried to kill him while under that man's control. Even if it wasn't her fault, she shouldn't have allowed herself to be captured in the first place. Then Naruto wouldn't have needed to save her, so this was her way to say thank you and that she was sorry. Yes, ma'am. Good, anything else? Ryuko asked with a glance at the man. We're receiving a 23% increase in profits. More than expected from your scale care products. Good, 23%, speak with accounting and tell them I want to increase the pay of the employees to fit the increase in profits. Ryuko spoke kindly as she turned away from the man. The profits from that line of sales was higher than expected, then she could afford to give everyone who worked under her a small increase in their wages. She was already making a lot of money from her hero work itself, her side products just added to that, and making more than what was expected just meant she would have more money than she really needed. Her staff worked very hard for her, to make sure that she could comfortably work as a hero, and they deserved to be rewarded for their efforts. It had been a couple of years since she had given them wage increases as well, so it was about time for her to do that anyway. Also, I'm going out on patrol now. Let the others know. Time to do hero work. At U.A. Hero names, we're deciding them today. Naruto thought as he leaned against his hand. He already knew what his was going to be, so it wasn't like he was going to be putting much thought into it like everyone else. They had Midnight joining Shota in his class, since he wasn't a good judge of what everyone could use for a name or not. Everyone was extremely excited for this, a class where they got to do something as important as begin the process of choosing a hero name. The name the world would come to know them by. As long as somebody doesn't choose anything. Alien Queen. Mina, your hero name is Pinky. Naruto corrected the girl instantly when she shouted that. It was one of the first things he ever called her, and what most people would remember her by anyway, her body being like 95% pink. Ooh, kai. Mina pouted and started to walk back to her desk. She had really wanted to go with the name she chose. She placed her head on the desk, suddenly a little uninterested in everything. Alien Queen sounded so much cooler. Since you're so eager, why don't you go next? Midnight pointed out to Naruto, and she started to pass out more dry erase boards to the class to write their names down on. Naruto stood up and started to write his name down on the way to the front of the class. Everyone was kind of excited, not just for his name of course, to see what their classmates were picking for hero names. Don't worry about me, I'm here, everything is alright. I'm alright, being a hero is dangerous, this is just part of the job. Naruto stood in front of the class boldly, and then, he flipped his board around. Rather instantly, there was audible gasps when Naruto's hero name was revealed to all of them, even Midnight was a little shocked. Are you sure? A name like that has a lot of weight behind it. Midnight pointed out, her tone unsure. When I show up, I want these words to be the first thing people think. I want my name to reflect how I want people to feel. No matter how hurt I am, this name will tell people everything is okay, that they can believe that everything will be alright. Naruto spoke with a wide grin. He had another reason, a reason nobody in the class other than possibly Midnight would understand. She might be aware that he and All Might shared a relation, but that was only because she was UA teaching staff. The Kitsune hero, alright. Those words, he wanted people to think of those words when he arrived. That way, they would feel safe, because when he arrived, everything would be alright. No matter how hurt he was alright, and he would keep them safe. His name would put their hearts at ease, and allow them to think they would be safe. Are you sure you don't want to go with something Fox-related? Midnight asked him. All Right would be a name that would carry the weight of the name All Might with it, being a hero name for a legendary hero. The name was something of a homage to the #1 hero, and Naruto might get a lot of crap for his chosen name from those who didn't know how he was related. That's pretty arrogant, naming himself after All Might like that. That was the common thought of a portion of the class. That was saying a lot, to name yourself after the #1 hero. Naruto could see it in their eyes, that they were shocked and disbelieving of his hero name. Naruto didn't frown, he took it with a smile on his face. Outside the classroom, Toshinori, listening in on the class, put his hand over his heart and had tears in his eyes. His smile was stretching as far as it could go when he heard and looked through the crack in the door to see what Naruto picked for himself. He had assumed Naruto would pay homage to his mother or father, or make a Fox-related name. He had never thought Naruto would do something like that, and carry on the legacy of his name. Naruto chose not to inherit One for All, so he had also never even considered the possibility that Naruto might inherit something else from him. He had never felt so touched as a hero before, than somebody choosing to carry on his legacy in this way. I never knew he looked up to me like this. Minato, I'm sorry, but I can't stop myself from feeling happy, he chose to carry my name over yours. He couldn't help it, even as he felt guilty, he even more so felt happiness. He needed to support Naruto in this. Chapter 51 Painfully Musical. 0 requests. For many in the class who didn't get to show off during the sports festival, they got 0 requests from pro heroes to join them. It was up to them to put in requests to pro heroes to allow them to take on an internship, or they would be assigned one for themselves before the end of the day. For a lot of people who didn't really place in the tournament, or got taken out of it quickly, that meant no requests. For others like Naruto and Bakugo, they had several thousand requests, or Todoroki with his famous father also having as many requests. Over half of the class didn't have a single request though, other than those who were being hand-selected for their quirks. This sucks. Kyoka thought to herself as she laid down on her bed. She didn't know any pro heroes who would take her, so at the end of the day, she was going to be assigned one to take her own as an intern. She was just going to have to deal with it, she guessed. Maybe she would pass the time practicing one of her many instruments, she was usually too busy with homework to do that anymore. She was already in her PJs, and she didn't feel like being social at the moment. She had asked for her dorm room to be soundproofed, so if she played a little loud, she was sure that nobody would notice or be bothered by it. Knock knock knock. Huh, nobody visits me? Kyoka had yet to have anyone really visit her room yet, despite all the time they had all been living in the dorms. The door opened. "Hope you're decent, Kyoka," Naruto stated as he came in, with his hand over his eyes, just in case she wasn't. In his hand covering his eyes, he had some papers in them. Kyoka sat up and crossed her legs. She was decent in how she was dressed. "I'm good, way to barge in," Kyoka commented with a small grin. She wasn't too bothered by what he had done, she was going to let him in anyway. "What brings you here, don't you have some offers to go through?" Kyoka asked him with a little scorn. Naruto had gotten the most offers out of everyone, thanks to his spot as first place, and how he did it in such an overwhelming way. She figured he would be up all night trying to pick who he was going to go for, after he had listed his preferences. Naruto shrugged. "I already chose, I chose a hero in a city that I need to go to anyway. I heard you and some of the others didn't get any offers, so I wrote some letters of recommendation for you guys. I think you would do great if you spent a week under the hero native." Naruto walked towards her and showed off his letter for her. He sat down on her bed with her, a wide smile on his face. She was stunned when he passed her the letter, and saw that he had actually written a letter for her. A real one, and on the page underneath the letter, there was a letter of acceptance as well. She glanced up at him. "What do you want?" "Nothing, I just wanted my friends to find places that could help them." Naruto stood up and started to get ready to go towards the next person. He had a few more letters to deliver, since he had gotten the approval of a few heroes to have his friends intern for them. Kyoko was just shocked when she heard that, and when Naruto didn't request anything from her. She looked around her room, to try and think of anything that she could do for him, and the answer came to her almost instantly. "Music. As thanks, let me teach you how to play something. Pick anything here, and I can teach you as much as I know. Before you try and say you don't need thanks, I insist you let me do this. I don't want to feel like I owe you or anything." Kyoka got up from her bed and chased him down, grabbing the back of his shirt. She closed and locked her door quickly, refusing to let Naruto leave until he had picked something to let her teach him. It was honestly the least she could do, since he was going out of his way to further her career and experience with this. Naruto looked down at her, before he grabbed her waist, picked her up and walked her back towards her bed. He sat her down, and her jaw dropped when she realized that she had just been treated like a child. "I'm honestly good, I can already play the guitar and piano a little, so dash." He shouldn't have said that. "Really? You play? You don't have any instruments in your room?" Kyoka hadn't heard of this before. Naruto didn't seem to have any passion for music, so she had assumed that he didn't know how to play anything. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "My quirk makes me angry, so my uncle thought this would be a good way to focus my mind. It didn't really work." Naruto was grabbed by the hand and pulled so that he was sitting on her bed. She went over and grabbed her keyboard, before she picked it up and put it down in front of Naruto, turning it on for him. She even sat next to him and looked at him with eyes filled with expectation. "Honestly, I don't really have fun doing it either, I only know one song." Naruto spoke to her with an uncomfortable face. It was the one song that meant a lot to him, and it wasn't something he really liked to do for just anyone. She smiled when she turned the keyboard on, and scooted closer to him so that they were side by side, and she pushed her fingers to it and started to play something pretty simple, just a small few-second tune. She was really good. "My family loves music, and I do too. I didn't know anyone in the class could play anything." Kyoka plugged one of her earphone jacks into the keyboard, before she extended the other and plugged it into a speaker. With her quirk, she could feel music more deeply than any other person, other than her mother. Fine, but just this once, this is one hell of a way to thank somebody, making them play with you." Naruto told her with a sad smile. This was going to hurt. Music is the heart's melody, right? Well, I want to play with you, and show you how thankful I am. You play your song, and make it come out of there. Then, when I feel you, I'll play a song for you I'll know you will love. Kyoka just wanted to hear his song, so that she could play one for him as thanks. Naruto looked at her for a moment, before he sighed and nodded his head. This was going to hurt him. "Play, Naruto Ost Decision, piano version. Kind of slow, but it's... Kyoka closed her eyes when Naruto's fingers slowly went over the keys. She could feel each note reverberate through her entire body, and with her hearing, every note felt like magic that coursed through her blood. She blocked out the entire world, and allowed her thoughts and body to only take in his song. From Naruto, she expected his song to sound fast, catchy, and pretty hardcore for a guy like him. This slow beat, the timing of each note, and how long they all lasted was surprising. Her heartbeat started to slow down as she relaxed, and laid back on her own bed, feet hanging off the edge as she found herself relaxing. The music wasn't happy, it was almost saddening, but it was beautiful. I hate this song so much, why does it have to be so beautiful? Naruto thought to himself as he leaned his head to his shoulder, and wiped a tear out of his eye. He was thankful that Kyoka was so oblivious to him at the moment. He didn't want her to see his reaction to the song he was playing. The worst part, it was his fault he learned this song. It was the song he had chosen over all over songs to learn. It held a special importance to him after all. Kyoka was smiling. She could feel it, in her imagination, this song had a cool rain washing over her body. She could picture herself standing in the light rain, alone, with nobody around. Slowly, her smile faded when in her own imagination, the rain started to get heavier, and it drowned out the world around her. As the speed of the notes came faster, she could feel her body stinging. Her face felt wet, not just in her imagination, but her face was getting wet somehow in real life. Music inspires emotions, and conveys so much. What was the person who wrote this song trying to say? And why did Naruto learn it? Kyoka allowed her mind to wander as the song started to draw closer to its conclusion. As she listened to the song, the end came almost too soon. She got so long in the song that time passed her by too quickly. Then it ended. Okay, now I've got to go take care of those letters dash. That was really pretty, man, that was emotional. Kyoka unplugged her jacks from the keyboard and speaker. She sat up, and felt the tears drip off of her chin and into her lap. She rubbed her face, and dried it off. She had gotten really absorbed into his music, but she wasn't done. She grabbed Naruto's hand and pulled Naruto back into bed, before she pushed him over a little and sat directly in front of the keyboard. Since this is the type of music you like, I know just the thing to show my thanks. I didn't expect you to like that sad stuff though. Kyoka spoke as she cracked her fingers. Naruto stood up. I hate sad music actually, so I'm just going to go. I really didn't need a thanks though, but thanks for trying. Wait, then why do you only know that song if you hate sad music? Kyoka was a little, read as very, confused when she heard that. That song was completely beautiful, and to be honest, Naruto hating it when he was the one that learned it was weird. Naruto gave her a fake smile. My uncle told me this song played at my parents' and siblings' funeral. With that, Naruto closed the door, and Kyoka had no words to say. That was the quickest way for Naruto to ruin her enjoyment of his song, and the fastest way for him to stop her from trying to play a song for him. She felt bad that she had insisted so badly that he play for her, and she could now understand why she had felt so sad when she had been listening to the music. It was a song that was written to celebrate the memory of those who had passed away. It wasn't something that was made to be played for shits and giggles. Kyoka collapsed onto her bed, and looked at the letter and acceptance letter that Naruto had written and gotten for her. He had put in so much effort in order to make sure that all of his classmates, his friends, who didn't get any offers would be able to intern for somebody who would be a good hero for them. I human garbage for doing that to him. After the internships, I'll make it up to him for doing this. Kyoka felt horrible for making him do that. She had taken advantage of the fact that Naruto had trouble turning down his friends when they insisted on doing stuff with him. She needed to do something big to apologize. She would talk to all of the other people who Naruto was getting internships for, and see if they would be able to help her. Since no doubt they would all want to thank Naruto for what he was doing for them. She knew what she was going to do. Chapter 52 A very busy day. This area now belonged to the volcano thieves. If any of you so much as call a pro hero, we'll kill all of these hostages. A massive man shouted out as he hoisted a large bag of money over his shoulder with one hand. He possessed a massive, muscular build to him, with flaming red hair that flowed all over his head. He wore a fully body dark blue bodysuit, and he had rock-based gloves and boots, with his right arm having a massive stone gauntlet on it. Smoke was being released from his stone shoulder pads, and he had a mask over his lower face. With the recent death of a pro hero, Kamui Woods, they had gotten the desire to finally act in the light, instead of keeping their actions to the shadows, stealing only small-time objects. Volcano, the leader. Clear a path. The second man of the group stated, a much shorter, very skinny many with giant fan-like fans stated, his head shaped like a hairdryer. He had black tights on, that cut off at his shins and forearms. He had a bag of money too in one hand, and his other hand pointed towards the crowd and started to spin. A large tornado shot from his hand and the crowd parted, or else risked getting hit by the attack. Gust boy. Finally, a woman without money in her arms, wielding a small blunt weapon, showed a hostage that she was keeping in front of her. She was a tall, attractive woman, with wild white hair, and narrow gray eyes. She had a similar mask around her neck to her boss, and goggles over her eyes, her body being very on display in a massively revealing costume. She had small amounts of ash coming off of her free arm, and she started to throw it into the crowd, forcing them to close or avert their eyes to avoid getting ash in them. Dusty ash. Shit, where are the pro heroes right now? A police officer thought as he rubbed the ash from his eyes. Volcano shot lava out of his gauntlet, and the cleared path was now outlined by lava, preventing anyone from getting in their way. Dusty Ash slammed her weapon into the back of the hostage's head, knocking him out cold. Let's make an escape. She spoke to the leader, who nodded. Best to get out of here while they had the money. Gah. Gust boy. Volcano questioned when he heard the sounds of his underling shouting in pain. He and Dusty Ash both turned to face the wind-based quirk user, before they saw him lying in a crater, defeated and knocked out. All he saw was a quick flash or orange move right by his right side, going underneath his outstretched arm. Wah! Dusty Ash felt a punch hit her in the gut as her vision was filled with orange. She was sent flying, and she saw a large fox with an outstretched arm, before the fox balled up his fist again and punched her before she got too far away. She was slammed into the side of the building, her own body keeping her pinned as she too was knocked out cold. Volcano turned around when he heard her shout, before he saw he was face to face with a large fox as well, with burning red eyes glaring into his own. Hi, I'm all right, are you? Naruto spoke as he waved a hand in a friendly manner. Naruto started to raise both of his fists into the air, before he slammed them onto the top of Volcano's head, knocking him to the ground in a crater of his own. Naruto clapped his hands together, before he dusted himself off, since the air had a good amount of dust in it still. So, are you? Naruto repeated the question once more for added effect. No. Volcano managed to weakly say, before his body went limp, and he passed out. Volcano thieves, swiftly defeated. It's Foxman, and he's wearing a costume. Foxman, you saved my cousin, you're awesome. Can we get an interview? All right, you went off without me. It is extremely rude to leave me behind, while you're my intern. The large dragon, Ryukyu, spoke as she descended from above. When she was close to the ground, she turned back to normal and landed on her feet. The second she had explained that they would be doing hero work today, and for the entire week of his internship, Naruto had grabbed the costume she asked him to wear, put it on, and he rushed into action. In retrospect, she should have seen it coming that he would be this eager. She looked up at his much taller form, in his over 7-foot form, it was like standing in front of freaking All Might himself. Naruto waved to the crowd awkwardly. He was doing legal hero work, under the authorization of a pro hero, and their watchful eye. For once, he didn't have a reason to flee the scene of a crime the second he was finished with the villains. Alright, I thought your name was Foxman, are you paying tribute to the hero All Might? In turn, does this mean that Alright-san is a student of a hero school? One of the reporters managed to slip by the crowd and pushed forward. The police started the process of collecting the villains, and taking pictures of the damages to the concrete and the small damage to the building. They would document everything that happened as quickly as possible, so the bank could be reopened as soon as it could be. While that happened, the reporters who usually showed up once a villain attacked, would be able to swarm the hero who saved the day with whatever questions or so they wanted to. I never once said my name was Foxman. Naruto deadpanned, but he forced himself to maintain a friendly smile. Always smile, was his uncle's most important lesson. Well, alright, this is part of hero work. Thank you everyone, for staying as calm as you could. Thanks to my intern alright, the situation was resolved quickly. Come now alright, let's. Ryukyu spoke, before she stopped when her phone made a noise. Opening it up, she saw a message from her deployment team, showing that another crime nearby was happening. She could see requests for heroes with quirks that increased their strength to show up and give a lending hand. There is a burning building nearby. It seemed a villain used his quirk to light it on fire, but knocked himself and he's already gone. Ryukyu glanced up and realized that Naruto had already transformed into a larger form to gain more speed, and run towards where the fire was. Even without a location from her, the black smoke billowing up in the distance was a good indicator of the location of the fire. She looked towards Naruto running to the crime scene, before she used her quirk and transformed into a dragon, before flying after him. He was far too eager. -10 minutes later. Naruto, in his four-tail form, was standing next to the building, and he was reaching inside of the building itself, and carefully pulling out as many people, slowly and safely, as possible. He had already saved a total of close to 100 or so people, while on the other side of the building Ryukyu was doing the same thing. She was allowing people to jump out of the window, and use her wings to land safely, before gently lowering them to the ground. They weren't the only heroes on the scene for this one, as many heroes with strength powers were doing their best to stop the nearby buildings from collapsing as large as of the flaming building fell onto them. The hero who called for help, a water-based one, was shooting water into the building to put out as much of the flames as possible, the firefighters helping him with it as they followed his orders. Part of the building itself collapsed, and it would have gone into the street, if Naruto didn't use his tails to catch the collapsed parts, and push his chest into the building. He smiled wide, and sent the people on the street a thumbs up. That is everyone. Death Arms shouted as he came out of the building's bottom floor with the last of the survivors in his arms. With that done, Naruto and Ryukyu were given their key to carefully destroy the now collapsing building in a way that would make it collapse in on itself. So, they pushed themselves up against the building, and pushed through the walls, doing their big parts and collapsing it. The water hero started to put out the rest of the flames before they could spread to any of the nearby buildings, while Ryukyu took her human form again. Reporters were on her instantly. I'm just glad that the worst everyone got were minor burns, no need to thank me. If the other pros hadn't contacted my office, then I wouldn't have known to show up. When Naruto joined Ryukyu, in his one-tail form, he saw that she was already surrounded by a multitude of people. People were taking her picture, making sure to shake her hand, and were trying to get interviews with her. She just gave them nods and would try to respond to them as calmly as possible, more than willing to make a smooth public appearance. Death Arms was even being talked to by some people. Not nearly as many people were interested in him as they were Ryukyu, but a good number of them were. Even other heroes who had done less were being given praise by their fans. Did you employ a new sidekick Ryukyu? This isn't my sidekick, this is a student of U.A. Foxman. Naruto felt a small thing hug against his leg, and he blinked and looked down when he saw a small girl that he sort of recognized hugging him. She only came up to his knee, and her shout and hug had stopped anyone from asking him questions. She looked about maybe 6 or 7 years old, and she seemed really familiar to him. She was smiling brightly as a woman came and grabbed her. Yuki, no, you can't just hug people like that. I'm sorry Foxman. The mother held her child and bowed a little. Naruto blinked, before he crouched down and looked at the little girl. My name is alright, not Foxman, Yuki-chan. Last time I saw you, you were even smaller than that. You've gotten bigger, you didn't have anything to do with this fire, did you? Naruto teased the girl as he poked her forehead lightly. He remembered her now, she was the girl who awakened her quirk and froze a road, and sent a gasoline truck crashing into a building, setting a building on fire. He was surprised to see her again, and it had been over a year since he last saw her. She had grown a little, lost a tooth in her smile, and she wasn't unleashing her quirk randomly. She smiled even brighter, and Naruto could see a camera facing his way. I wanna be a hero like you. Mama. My drawing, I wanna show him. I wanna. Yuki shouted at her mouth and reached for her purse. I'm sorry my child is such a hassle, you're her favorite hero. She draws pictures of you all the time. If you wouldn't mind. The mother passed her child over to Naruto, and the girl climbed onto his shoulder and sat herself down, hugging his head. The mother took this chance to go through her purse, and bring out the drawing of the day her child had made. Could you? The mother asked as she also pulled out a pen with the drawing. Naruto blinked. First, the drawing was a picture of Naruto in his fox form, a very crude drawing of him to say the least, holding hands with a crude drawing of Yuki. Naruto, were his face not covered in fur, would have been caught by the cameras blushing in shyness. He was honestly touched that he was somebody's favorite hero. In the picture, Yuki was wearing a crude hero costume, with sidekick written on the front of it. Please. Sure. Naruto took the pen, while Ryukyu watched from a small distance with a smile, as he gave out his first autograph. He signed the picture with his own hero name, all right, and he gave the letter G an extra spiral on the curve. To a future hero, from all right. Thank you. Yuki screamed into his ear, and he remained smiling even as he winced. He passed the picture back to the mother, before he somehow managed to pry the child off of his head. Thank you for your support, but we must get going. Ryukyu stepped in and insisted towards Naruto. She nodded to him with her face set in stone. Naruto nodded. He had chosen Ryuko for a reason, and he needed to speak with her at her office soon. That's it for part 7. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.